we're standing in the grace of God. How come it is that if I'm standing in the grace of God, I got tribulations to worry about? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I don't much like that, we say. Good night, Larry. You say that we're going to talk about the love of God and all of it in this paragraph, and that we have the love of God, we have the grace of God, we have the hope of God, we have faith, we have been justified, and all this, and now I got to put up with tribulations? Doesn't make any sense. But it's because we don't understand the way God understands. We don't understand the way God works.
Welcome to the Timeless Gospel Podcast, a podcast that showcases the sermons of Larry Horton, my dad. I'm your host, Faith Ann. Larry was an exhorter, a true teacher, whose ministry was to proclaim the good news of the gospel and show Christians the joy and rest they can find in their Christian walk. Each episode features a sermon, followed by a discussion. Finally, episodes end with a hymn arranged and performed by Larry's granddaughter, Mandolin. You can find this podcast on YouTube at The Timeless Gospel. Please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a comment on an episode you found edifying. You can get in touch with me at thetimelessgospel@gmail.com. That's thetimelessgospel@gmail.com. Before this episode begins, let me explain how it's slightly different from the usual format. This episode's sermon is a short clip from the sermon played, the one right before this one. After the sermon clip, the remainder of my discussion with Larry's daughter Joy is played. She finishes her incredible story of how she came to look at her trial biblically after playing this sermon tape in an old dinky tape recorder in her dark bedroom in the midst of tremendous suffering and pain. You'll hear the goodness of God come through in her story at the end. And now here's Larry.
This word tribulation, and not only this, but we exalt in our tribulations. The word has to do with a wine press or an olive press used back in the day that the Bible was written. It was a great big steel thing, had a bunch of sharp claws on it, and you would put the olives in there, and it would crush the olives, and it would make oil. Now in the scripture, and then also you have the same kind of a terminology with grapes. You got to press the grapes. You got to have tribulation on the grapes to make wine. That's the term that Paul's using here. And we know in scripture that oil and wine is a picture of joy and gladness. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The oil was used to make your face shine, much like it is today. It was a way of showing joy and gladness. Throughout scriptures, oil and wine is a picture of joy and gladness. Now we're all, as believers and Christians, we're all after fruit, aren't we? The Bible says you got to have fruit. And so we go out and we get us a bunch of olives. We get us a bunch of grapes. We got fruit. The problem is we will not put those olives and the grapes in that thresher, in that tribulation. We got the fruit, but pretty soon it dries up. And an old dried up grape makes raisins, doesn't it? What do raisins do? Make you thirsty. We got nothing. We just old dried up raisin. I don't know what good an olive would be, an old dried up olive. Is there anything we do with that? Just throw it away. Just we got fruit. Yeah, I got fruit. I quit smoking. I quit drinking. I quit cussing. And I go to church 3 times a week. I got fruit. I love my neighbor when he's lovely. And I give, pretty good. And I've got fruit. Just that's no good. Just old olives and just old grapes. Man, oh man. If you can get put in that press and get that fruit squashed to where you got some oil, where you got some wine, now you're a joy. Now you have great joy. You're a joy to others. We don't like to go through it, but we must. It says so right here. It says so right here. Let's turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 4. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8. Let's go back to verse 7. 4, verse 7. But we have the treasure in earthen vessels, that the surpassing greatness of the power may be of God and not from ourselves. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not despairing, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus, that the life of Jesus also be manifested in our body. There's that life and death business again. Let's turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 6 for a moment. But in everything, committing ourselves as servants of God, in much endurance, in affliction, in hardship, in distress, in beatings, in imprisonments, in tumults, in labors, in sleeplessness, in hunger, in purity, in knowledge, in patience, in kindness, in the Holy Spirit, in genuine love, in the word of truth, in the power of God, by the weapons of righteousness for the right hand and the left, by glory and dishonor, by evil report and good report, regarding as deceivers and yet true, as unknown yet well known, as dying yet behold we live, as punished yet not put to death, as sorrowful yet always rejoicing, as poor yet making many rich, as having nothing yet possessing all things.
Now, from week to week, we were placing our hope constantly in the next appointment, the next specialist. It seems like our last hope was not a neurologist and not an ophthalmologist, but a fancy neuro-ophthalmologist. Only 2 in the state. Only 2 of those in the state. And, you wait months and months to see this neuro-ophthalmologist, only 2 in the state. And we think it's going to be 3 months out, and I can't do this for 3 months. And we get a call. Oh, there's been a cancellation. You can come in a week from now. And I remember, running and telling Dad, look what God has done. Sorry, before I get to that, I had a spinal tap done. Thinking that maybe it was some kind of too much fluid or something in my brain. I had every MRI you could have, CAT scan. I had it. They were saying this CAT scan is going to be so detailed that we're going to see the nerves. The nerves. Every nerve in your eyeball is going to be magnified. Nothing came of it. Everything was normal. The spinal tap. I remember being, laid on the bed and having to be real still, and they stuck a needle, in the back. And even my husband, before, at the hospital, we're getting the spinal tap, and he says, "Joy, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be it." What else what else is he supposed to say? We're gonna find out. And it's, they have this needle in my back, and I have to be real still, and they're looking and looking. And they say, "Well, everything's normal." And, I just start shaking. I'm just devastated, but I have to be still because I have this thing in my back. So, okay, neuro-ophthalmologist. Of course. This is an eyeball thing. This is possibly a brain thing. What else could it be? It's not a toe thing. Mm-hmm. He's going to know. We get there. Only 2 in the state. I won't say his name. But we go in. He says, "Okay, have a seat." And he shines some lights in my eyes. I'm not exaggerating. This was less than 2 minutes, this appointment. It was less than 2 minutes. He shines it. He doesn't do anything else. He just shines it. He says, "I can't help you." And he says, "Pain pills and sunglasses. That's what you have." And then he just sits down and starts filling out paperwork, And I think I yelled at him, and Daniel had to, pull, come on, let's go.
Even if he didn't have an answer, he could have been.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He was completely. No feeling in the man, but that's fine. I didn't need his feeling. I needed one or the other, an answer
or empathy.
Yeah. Now during this, it just keeps going. No answers. Mom is getting worse. She's to the point where, she's eating napkins because she thinks it's whipped cream, that's where she's at. Dad is all he can do is take care of her,
all Daniel can do is rush home, jump in the shower real quick, get in bed with me, get behind me, and press on my head until he falls asleep. So there's, I don't know how many people, 7 of us in this house. My girls, so I have 3 of them in the house. My oldest one is out of the house, but those 3 girls, these are like young teenagers. These are like 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 17-year-old. I don't know. I don't even know what kind of suffering they went through. I'm sure, they went through suffering. I hate to admit this, but it wasn't on my mind at the time. I didn't even have anything in me to, really consider that, what kind of suffering they were, or even Daniel. But those girls kept this ship from capsizing.
Yeah.
I mean, they did everything. I don't know how anything got cleaned, but they kept everybody fed. They went grocery shopping. I mean, they kept it afloat. I remember one day I'm in bed. I mean, I'm for 2 years with a little break in the middle, but basically 2 years, I don't leave the bed. And my youngest, she might have been 10, she comes in and she says, "Mom, I'm sorry to tell you this." And she tells me a problem. And I'm not going to say what it is. This is a problem that under normal circumstances would be cause for prayer warriors, for sure.
Right.
Like, let's get our prayer chain going. Let's, there's a big problem. And all I have in me to do is say, okay. And then she leaves the room. And I remember spending about 1 minute, and I'm getting a little bit closer to my mindset between me and God. And I remember praying, saying, all right, God, would you have mercy on somebody in this house? Could you just do it for her? It's clear that you're not going to do it for me, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not praying for me. If you know all things, then you know that I'm praying this. I may not be one of yours, but you know that I'm saying this. So could you have mercy on somebody? Could you have mercy on her? And I remember saying to God, and God, if this is going to get done, you are going to have to come down and just do it. Because nobody in this house can do anything about that. And he did, and that's another story, but he did over time. And I had nothing to do with it. I don't know how the problem got solved, but it did. Now, where I was spiritually at this point was I wasn't yet convinced that I wasn't a Christian, but I was starting to wonder, but still had hope. I had come up with the last hope. I know what we're going to do. We're going to solve this problem. Faith Ann and Dave, they're going to have to sell their house. We're going to have to sell this house. John and Levi, they're going to have to sell their house. And everybody's going to have to send me to the Mayo Clinic. I was in that state of mind, like I'm being dangled over a fire here. And, I don't care if anybody loses their house. I don't care. I mean, that's how selfish I was.
I wouldn't. I don't know if I would say selfish, but
totally desperate. And then I had my best friend Stephanie on the line for a Facebook. I'm not a Facebook. You can edit that out. GoFund me. She was on the ready. She was on the line to start a GoFundMe. I had to do a bunch of stuff first. So I managed to gather through the phone, gather records, from all of these people that I'd been to, pain management, everybody, my current doctor, my old doctor, ophthalmologist, everybody, and get it to the Mayo Clinic. And so I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for a response, and then it's on. We're gonna GoFundMe. Everybody's gonna sell their house, get me up to the Mayo Clinic. Still thinking, I got to go through this. I understand. I got it. You make people suffer, okay? But this is gonna be it. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. So again, in bed, and I get a phone call, and it's the Mayo Clinic. Hello, is this Joy Montoya? This is the Mayo Clinic. and time stood still. I mean, it just, stopped. Yes, this is joy. Oh, yes. Hi, ma'am. I spoke to the doctor, and he said that there's nothing we can do for you. And I'm just silent. I mean, I can't say anything. I'm in total shock. And, she even had to say, ma'am, are you there? And I said, you talked to the doctor? Oh, yes. You have all my records, all my stuff? Oh, yes, ma'am. Yep. Yeah, I talked to him, and he wanted me to tell you that there's nothing he can do. I'm going to say at that point, I stopped being frantic. I stopped crying. If there was a noise that could be made, I didn't make this noise, but if you could say that my inner being was making a noise, it would have been a low growl.
Yeah.
And now I knew for certain that God did not love me. He hated me because I couldn't put it together. Nobody had ever heard of this. There wasn't anybody in the world, in my mind, that this has ever happened to. God picked me. He doesn't love me. That's obvious, because it doesn't line up. These pictures that he has about a bird and a wing and being able to be protected and being under that wing, that's not happening with me. That doesn't apply to me. Not only that, not only am I going to suffer in hell, you're not going to let up. I'm going to be 80 and I'm going to be in this condition. You're just, and this is so hard to say out loud at this point. I'm just trying to say where I was at this point. I had these visions. I'm not saying I had a vision in the way that, people in the Bible had visions. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I would imagine God in heaven with a lightning bolt on his left hand and a lightning bolt on his right hand, and just striking, just jab, 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 every moment. So I'm in this state. I think probably Daniel could attest to that, how quiet I got. I got real quiet. And again, my youngest daughter comes in and says, Mom, we can't find Grandpa. Go ahead. And I am in such a state that when she said, we can't find Grandpa, I think, yeah, he's probably passed out. He's probably passed out again. He's passed out somewhere because Dad would do that. He would pass out and then get up and go to Penny's.
Right. He got an earful from me one time. We passed out in Penny's and then drove home. And yep. Anyway.
So that's what I assumed. And again, I was selfish. I know that, maybe even people listening would think, oh, no, you weren't selfish. No, I mean, I had no compassion or thoughts for anybody. Yeah, he's passed out. He's probably passed out in the bathroom. And I didn't take it upon myself to go look myself. I just tell my 10-year-old daughter, well, go look in the bathroom. And then I start hearing, Mom, Larry, my youngest daughter. She comes back after a minute and says, Grandpa's on the floor. And it was weird how when she said Grandpa's on the floor, I knew. And I don't know how I knew, but I knew. I knew he was gone. And so I did. I just got through it. I managed to get up and peer, through the light and go in there, and I saw him, and I knew it was over. I spoke at his funeral, and they were genuine words. I spoke about, Dad being blameless, wholly blameless and beyond reproach, and he's going to bust on in there. He's going to bust through those gates. He's going to bust in on him, because of his standing before God. And, I must say it was a good speech. It was a good speech.
It was.
And I was genuine about the theology of it. Never doubted, even in this state, like that. Never doubted any of the Bible or God or anything. And I'll tell you, like, how I won't say, I don't want to demean people that are actually crazy by saying I went a little crazy. Like, I just wasn't thinking clearly. My theology was all jacked up because I was convinced now at this point that it wasn't that I wasn't elect. It was that I really was saved when I was 19. And God changed his mind.
Oh, wow.
And that's ridiculous theology. We don't believe that. But I was that's what I had come up with in my mind, is that God said, and just for whatever reason, he said, meh, never mind. So I knew all of this great stuff that I said at Dad's funeral, it applied to Dad for sure.
But not you.
Not me. There was a lot of sleepless nights. Now I guess I was taking a strong enough, sleeping pill where up until this point I was able to sleep. And I lived for that. But now at this point after he died, there was a lot of nights of literally being awake. So, I've got all that time in bed all day, and now I'm all night long. Daniel, this whole 2 years, he would always say so gently, so sweetly, he would say, about every couple weeks, he would say, Joy, it's almost over. It's almost over. And I think he was genuine when he said that, but, he knew now his almost over might mean
longer,
3 more months,
yeah.
a year. Well, one night at this point when, I wasn't sleeping, he was hardly sleeping. It was in the middle of the night, and I said, nightmare. Nightmare. Like, I wasn't in a nightmare. It was just the only word I could say that, this is nightmare. And this is after Dad had died. And he goes, yes.
He didn't have anything encouraging to say.
Yeah, it was just, yes. So things were a mess. I mean, Mom was just, you, Faith Ann, you were the only, you just came in, however you did to deal with Mom in that house. And Aunt Shirley had brought these tapes, these old tapes in a box. And so part of what I would do, I would say, even over the whole 2-year process, the time is, and people would set this up for me. They would set up sermons for me to listen to. Never got help from any of them.
No, these weren't Dads. They
weren't Dads. It was just other people. Now, I will say there was one Vodi Bakum sermon on suffering that helped me for a day. And that's huge. Even a day. There was another sermon, Alistair Begg, that was helpful for a day. My very, very good friend that came to Dad's funeral, his name's Josh. I hadn't seen him since high school. He, we're 40, and he comes to my dad's funeral, and he waits till it's over, and he comes and finds me. He has had, I think, enough. He's had a trying life. And he says, Joy, this is what God has for you. You're just going to have to do it. And that helped me for, I'd say, half a day. And again, that sounds like not much, but gosh, if I could have a moment in this whole 2 years, one moment that was any way helpful, I'll take it. So that was helpful. But all this to say, that was kind of a routine where either Daniel would go to work, but he would set up videos for me. He would set up Vodi Bakum sermons or on the TV, and it was just noise. So I think, well, there's these tapes of Dad's, don't really care about anything he has to say. But maybe, the sound of his voice, God, I'll listen to the sound of his voice. I'll be helped. And, I'll just keep on living this way till I'm 80, and I'll, die, and I'll go to hell. So I have this box. I have the box, I think, of all these tapes that Aunt Shirley brought. And, nobody knew really what we were going to do with them yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I just pick a tape. I just pick a random tape. Only for Larry Horton, the character that he was, just to hear his funny, comforting voice. Had no concern about anything spiritual. I put it in. I'm in bed, in the dark, in the worst pain ever, and I put the tape in. He starts talking, and I'm just not hearing all the words. It's like only one word at a time would.
Do you think it was partly too because of the quality of the tape?
Oh, maybe, yeah. Or maybe it was just that I was just barely paying attention. And so I'm listening, and it's just noise, and I hear peace, and I get mad. That would sure be nice. It'd sure be nice if it applied to me, but it just doesn't. So I even further lose interest because that doesn't apply to me. And I've listened to this lesson, several times after this, and man, he says so much good stuff. So much good stuff regarding peace, and after he says peace, but I didn't hear any of it. Then the next word that comes out at me was crush, press, claws, thrash. And I said, wait. My youngest daughter, again, she does this thing where she goes, wait. And, it's in mid-sentence. It's in mid other people's sentences. People will be having a conversation and she'll go, wait. Or she'll come in a room and nobody's talking and she's not talking. And she'll go, wait. So that is what I did in my mind. I said, wait. Now, I had no idea where he was going. I didn't care. But I knew, wait a minute, that applies. That does have something to do with me. And then if I could have taken my eardrums out of my ear and enlarged them and wrapped them around the tape recorder and brought it back into my head,
right,
I would have done that. I have never been that glued to something. Now I'm hearing every word, every single word, and he is interchanging words like joy and gladness and oil and wine, all within these other words: crush, pressing. It's not that everything turned around in that exact moment. It's just that I am accepting every single word. Anything he's got to say now applies to me. It applies to me.
It's not that God has changed his mind about you, that you are actually.
Well, yeah. Now again, and I mean, I hadn't gotten there yet. That's where it ended up. But it was just that this applies to me. Whatever he's got to say next, that applies to me. I know about crushing. I know that. Now I know about crushing more than anybody. I know about that. And then he says, so I'm going to say a lot of what he said in the lesson. He says, we think we got a bunch of fruit. We think we got olives and grapes. The problem is we will not put ourselves through that thresher. As he's saying this, I thought, yeah, I wouldn't have put myself through that. I wouldn't have so much. Again, I'm thinking about having your hand over fire. If God came down in a vision and said, you will go to heaven, you just have to have your hand over a fire for 5 minutes. You got to watch it burn and melt, and you won't go to hell. You go to heaven. It's not possible for you to keep your hand there.
Right. You have a limbic system that says, no.
Yes.
Like the involuntary reflexes. And
yes, that's the word I kept trying to think of as reflex with my eyelids. So, okay, now my thought is, okay, I wouldn't have done that. I would not have chosen I wouldn't have willfully put myself in this. I probably would have taken any other suffering. And then he says, man, oh man, if you could get put in that press, squashed.
Right.
It's where you get that oil. You get joy. We don't like to go through it, but we must. Then he says, I'm sorry, guys. That's how God does it. He will do that. And that's the only way. So then I thought, well, good night. That is proof. It's proof. Now it's proof the other way. It was proven in my silly little feeble, all-knowing mind that I wasn't one of his. I was in my mind, oh, this is proof I'm not. Now, because it's the only way it happens, and he won't do this to other people that he doesn't care about. He won't do this. He won't put you through the wine press. He will put people through this wine press. And that is how you're going to get joy. And it was like now I'm in this state of accepting everything. It was like I instantly received joy because I believed that. So now it's not just a faith thing. I actually had it in this lesson, and I don't know when it happened because I don't remember thinking, okay, now I am so happy that I am going to sit upright. I don't remember thinking that, but through this, all I find myself, I'm getting sensational, like almost levitating. I wasn't levitating, people. I can't get high enough. I'm sitting up almost to the ceiling, and I'm laughing. And I'm crying, and again, I'm not out of my mind. This is joy. I've never been that happy in my life. I said that I had gotten quiet. I didn't speak for that time. And I said out loud, I said, thank you. I said, thank you. I was so thankful. I was so thankful.
Were you thankful that you hadn't been abandoned by God? Were you thankful that he was putting you through it? Or
I think, you know what? I think it wasn't just that the main crux of it wasn't being thankful that I hadn't been abandoned. I knew that now. I was thankful for the actual circumstance. I didn't care if it ever went away.
Wow. That's of the unnatural.
Yeah. Yes.
Or Larry talking about the natural and then the supernatural. That's a supernatural occurrence.
Yes. And that is this whole thing, this whole story, why I have went into such detail. Again, it's only to I want to share what God did. Who would be thankful for that whole mess? That doesn't happen naturally. I'm hearing this, all these words that he's saying at the end are just nothing but good. And he reads 2 Corinthians 4, he says, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. And now that I'm in this state, I take that a totally different way. And I take it, I'm able to bring it down a little bit into reason. Even this pain that I've gone through, that I'm saying it was crushing. My eyeballs were being crushed to death. Because I'm in a different state of mind now, I'm able to bring it down and say, I'm not crushed to death. I have been crushed, but not to death. And then I start thinking about Christ. And how he was crushed to death. And then I think, now I'm thinking, oh my, this sounds so sappy. But I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it anyway. I don't care. It sounds so sappy. But I think, my Jesus, my friend, my poor Jesus was crushed And for the first time ever, I was able to sympathize. It wasn't something you just read in the Bible that he was crushed. I could be with him.
Because you had a taste of it.
Yeah, just a taste, I'm sure, because, I wasn't crushed to death, but I did get a taste of it. In that moment, he was with me. Daniel has talked before about scriptures, how we know that Christ is sitting at the right hand of the Father. He's sitting. But there's a couple of examples where the scripture says Christ stood. And I think it had, one of them was having to do with Stephen when he was stoned to death. And I don't know, I don't mean to get in climb up a ladder and see God in his pajamas and know what all he's doing. But I would like to think that in that room, in that dark room, in devastation, no hope, that Jesus stood. He stood and almost like, okay, enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the pain, but enough. I'm here, and I've always been here.
And you could have picked any one of those tapes.
Yeah.
Isn't that just... You could have picked the one where he's talking about all the judgment, and then, how would that have helped? It just would have cemented what you already thought.
Yeah.
You could have picked any of them. You didn't even read them. You couldn't even read them.
No,
you just reached
no.
into the box.
Yep.
And, Aunt Shirley could have just as easily left those tapes up there as have brought them. And, Mom and Dad could have just as easily not sent her those tapes.
Yeah, when Aunt Shirley listens to this, this is, I can say to you, Aunt Shirley, it's all intertwined.
Yeah, God. And I did tell this to Aunt Shirley. I said, God put us in a Corvette. We're not driving it, so buckle.
Yeah. Yes.
And see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And these the words he used, the crushing, for me, that's what did it. For other people, I want to say this too, everything is about Christ. Everything comes down to Christ. We can't just read it that he suffered, that Christ was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Just read that and move on as if it's a side note, or the conforming to the image of Christ. We all get the idea that we do that by being more like so we read how Christ was and we just be nice. That has nothing to do with it. And looking at Christ, that makes us more like Christ. But with this lesson, it was kind of clear that really suffering, it's what does it.
Yeah.
It's that wine press, and he's going to do it. We're not going to put ourselves in it, but it will be done. He says, 2 Corinthians 4, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not despairing. And of course, I'm taking this as truth now. I can be perplexed, but I'm not despairing. Struck down. And this is what the word says. And this is what Dad said in this little tape on this old recorder that I picked. He says, we're struck down. And I that is the images that I was having of just God striking me over and over. Mm-hmm. We are struck down, but not destroyed. If there was ever a time that I or any of Larry Horton's kids would talk about being victorious, I never use that word. Mm-hmm. But in that bed, I had victory. I was not destroyed.
And isn't it interesting that you had nothing to do with it?
No, yeah. Nothing.
In spite of, almost.
In spite of, yeah. Because, putting the tape in was just for noise and for a somewhat familiar, pleasant voice. That's all it had to do with.
It reminds me of so many times in the Bible where, the stories of
of people meaning things for one thing and God turning it into something different. Yes. Esther and Paul persecuting Christians and, both Christian and non-Christian doing things and meaning it for something. And God saying, look what I'm going to do with this.
Yes. Yes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Another example of that, I don't want to get ahead of Aunt Shirley's episode, but again, it all comes down to Christ. I think that we all have to be, and that Christ can relate to us. And we all do that a little differently. So I've heard of other people with their sufferings of, let's say, sexual abuse, and they're not getting anywhere spiritually, with their healing. But when they read or they hear in the Bible, they took his clothes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's a vulnerability there.
Yeah. At least maybe trying to figure out God's sovereignty and how he did plan this for your good. Maybe that's a little, that's too much. Maybe we don't need to go there. But they can go to where they took his clothes. He knows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was able to go. I mean, it was given to me that Christ was struck down. Christ was crushed to death. And then he reads 2 Corinthians 6:4, in everything committing ourselves as servants in hardships, distress, beatings, turmoils, sleeplessness, as having nothing but possessing all things. So again, anything he says now is just gold. Now I'm sorry, as I'm thinking this through, I'm realizing now that during all this, I was sitting upright. Everything had changed. I was sitting upright, and it was a complete alternate reality of not being at war with God, not going to hell. Now I am so loved that he would do this magnificent, this huge showing. Now I'm only looking at this as proof. I'm only looking at this whole situation as a he didn't show me that he loved me just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's showing me that he loves me a lot.
Yeah.
As much as you could. But I correct myself. At this point, I had not yet. I was not laughing and crying out of pure joy until I heard this. When he says, "Okay, guys, flip a new channel now, and this is my opinion." But I'm already so. I mean, just anything the man is going to say now, it is truth. So I don't really care if it's his opinion or not. I'm just this is true. And he talks about persecution and how he kind of thinks that in this day and age in America we're not persecuted really. In the way that people think of being persecuted for their faith.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I kind of think that, he has to use other ways that we suffer for Christ. And he said, he goes into, now there's about 3 ways that can happen. And one is, because of your own sin. And, you get out of line and God has to correct you a little bit and you get crushed a little bit. A little bit of that juice comes out. And I hear that, and I'm accepting it as truth, but it doesn't hit my gut, And not to say, I've always known, I've known since I was 5 about the depravity of man. So I am not saying that I haven't done anything to deserve this. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It just didn't. And then he says the second way is, not to correct us, but just to instruct, just to show us that we need to depend on him. And then he says the third way, and this is where you're going to get the most joy. He's just going to flat do it. Just for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
It's not because you're necessarily out doing anything, And this is the biggest of all. This is where you're going to get the most joy. He just does it so that you'll be more like Christ. And that I lost it. That's when I was bawling out of joy, and I said, "Thank you." And I think that was probably that was just a mic drop as far as the proof. It was like, it wasn't just that I'm a part of these people that have to suffer. It was like you were saying earlier, how God turns things around. Before, it was, he picked me out of all these people. Out of every single person that's ever existed, he has picked me to throw lightning bolts of pain down forever, for every moment of my life. He's picked me to do that. And now he's picked me. He just because he loves me. And Daddy, he says about that lady in the prison, he counted her good enough. And he also says, but when God goes to work on you and puts you through that persecution, whatever that may be, and he just stays with it.
Yeah.
And stays with it. Don't run from that. Just say, yes, Lord. I'm standing in your grace. And yeah, this is a mess. But I know that you're not going to give up on anything you started, that you are a winner. And I'm here. That's the end of the story. It wasn't that I was thinking this is never going to go away or it will go away. It was that I didn't care. It was because all that joy, it filled up my being and my head, that those thoughts were pushed out. They just weren't in my head anymore. So it wasn't a matter of, God's going to do a miracle and I'm going to be better. I was just the happiest I'd ever been because he counts me worthy enough.
Well, now you have to tell us how it got. People want to know.
Well, okay. I remember that night, that day, Daniel coming home, and I guess this is part of the story that I was in the same condition. I was in the same condition, and Daniel comes home, and I said, Daniel, I'm going to be okay. And we didn't say much. I mean, that was, and we've talked about this later, Daniel and I, and how Daniel admitted that when I said that, he was just so tired. And, he kind of, oh, that's great that she says she's going to be okay, And everything was different. Everything was different after that. It didn't happen overnight. I spent probably the next 2, 3, 4 months coming out of it. And again, I mean, I didn't know why. I didn't, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Even if it's temporary, I'll take it. Man, I can't believe there was right before we moved out. So you've got Dad gone. Mom.
By that time, she had been in her place.
And I was able to have 2 hours in the kitchen, in the dim light, in the bottom cabinets, putting pots in a box. And I could not believe how good God was. just couldn't just, oh, he's so good. I mean, I just took things as they came. Oh, this is wonderful. But, you know, if I had more pain the next day and in bed, I didn't like it. I thought, oh, it'd be great if I could get better. But it's the peace at the beginning of what Dad was talking about. At least I don't ever have to worry about that again. I don't ever have to worry that this is about war. I mean, I have peace with God.
Yeah, I liked how he said that, you know, people are looking for peace. That even the most devout atheist is looking for peace with God.
Yes, and we think we can come to God with our terms.
With our terms, yeah.
And, you know, I think that's part of what I was probably doing throughout this is you better make me better. You owe it to me, you know?
Yeah.
That's it. He showed me it was completely on his terms. He's the one that has the power and love to put me in that wine press. So if I may, just a short, if I could speak to anyone who's listening, or if anyone that is listening maybe knows somebody that they might want to share this with, if I could speak directly to someone who doesn't know how they are going to get through 15 minutes. They don't know, they can't do another 15 minutes. I just want to say, wait. Just wait. Things always change. Of course, the greater truth, the greater purpose is that we want all to come to Christ, and we want that is your hope. That is your only hope. On a lesser scale, though, I think there are just things that are just so, and they're not necessarily have anything to do with spiritual truth, and that is things change. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to I want to speak to a 14-year-old girl who maybe gets thoroughly embarrassed on Twitter and their school. Kids commit suicide over this kind of stuff, or when a boyfriend breaks up with them. Mm-hmm. You don't know how you're gonna. And I don't mean to downplay that. They don't know how they're gonna get through the next day with shame or whatever. And I'm just saying, believe me, I know things change. Mm-hmm. They may not change overnight. They may not change in a year. And your circumstance may not even change, whatever that may be. But things change. And then, of course, our worldview, our ultimate hope is that God works miracles.
And he causes all things to work together for good for those who love him.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I will say one little thing and then we'll wrap this up. This was when I came over to the house when you guys were in the process of moving out, or you may have already been moved out. I just can't remember exactly, but you were in the process of moving out, and you weren't there, and Daniel was there, and I said something like, "I'm so happy for you guys that you're getting some relief," and Daniel, he said, Joy was singing in the bathtub the other day. And I just started crying,
like, oh, yeah, that's good. I mean, for him to say Joy was singing, it just meant something different after, what you guys have been through and how we managed to get, you and I, and we salvaged, I salvaged is misleading, but we maintained our relationship. Ooh, I'm so glad that's over. Oh, but thank you for coming on, and I want so many people to hear this. I know that it's just God's sovereign. I actually think, and if you want me to edit this part out, you can, but I think that you would be, I think that a church, you ought to go on this circuit, this church circuit or something, and tell Christians this story, whether they're Calvinist or Armenian or no matter what they are. I think you could. I think you have something to say about this crushing and this God's faithfulness and feeling like you were not one of God's anymore, and then being brought back through your dad. That's an incredible story.
Well, I can say it is because of God, and that I was hesitant about how much to say because I certainly, everybody's got their trials. Mm-hmm. And now, at the time, I was convinced, like, nobody has suffered as much as I am suffering. But obviously now at this time, I mean, I can think of all kinds of things that are worse than that, you know, but, there was a part of me that was hesitant about it because I just didn't want it to be about that. I didn't want it to be just about my suffering, but you can just see, I mean, what all God did with that whole story and the words that with this tape.
Yeah.
Completely life changing. Like I said, a second salvation just from this. And I don't want to put too much glory in the tape. It's the scripture. That idea would be neat. It would be neat to share this. Again, not for sympathy, but because people miss this. I think people, and I did. I missed it completely. All those years being a Christian, a true Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in church, I was maybe 25 and things were just great. And I remember specifically standing up in church, singing a hymn, and I think in the hymn, maybe it talked about suffering and the conforming to Christ because of the suffering. And I remember, and I remember thinking, I'll take some of that. I mean, I remember praying like, oh yeah, I want to be conformed and bring it on. I mean, not so much though. I mean, not so much that I can't get through it, but you can give me a little bit. Oh, please.
Oh man, you're messing around with a big God, so you got big things. Or he's messing around with us. More to the point. If you are a person who has a church that, you have some kind of influence and you want to, Joy to come, if you live in Oklahoma, maybe there might be something there. Email me at thetimelessgospel@gmail.com. Maybe there's something there for other people, for your church. I don't know. But regardless, thank you very much.
I'm so thankful for the time he gave me of that. I'm so thankful for the 2 years. I'm so thankful I could share it.
Mm-hmm.
And I might answer a question that people might be thinking in their head. They might be thinking, well, I wonder if she's afraid that it's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to answer that by saying, no, I'm not.
Mm. And I'm not afraid because I'm convinced it won't happen again. I'm just not afraid.
Yeah. That's a great place to end. Thank you for listening to the Timeless Gospel Podcast.